Well, here we are, July 2022, and I guess you can officially say E3 season is over. But can we even call it that? I made the joke in several of my E3 videos this year. I was like, can we still call it E3 season since E3 hasn't been around? You know, in 2020, it was just completely canceled. Nothing was going on. In 2021, they only did like some online stuff. And this year, it was straight up canceled again. They didn't even do anything online based, nothing. So can we still call it that? Can we call it E3 season now that Summer Game Fest is a thing? And, it seems like every other company is just doing their own, direct or, state of play or whatever you want to call it. Well, in 2023, yes, you can call it E3 season again because E3 will be back. So in this article on Video Game Chronicles today, it says PAX organizer Reedpop is officially taking over E3. Will reshape what didn't work. And, when you listen to podcasts, with a lot of the industry veterans and game journalists and stuff like that who talk about what they like and don't like about E3. It sounded like there was a lot of stuff that needed to be changed, in the background here. But what's interesting is that Reedpop is the company that is going to be helping E3 kind of get back into the limelight with gamers. Now, if you didn't know Reedpop, I had heard the name before, but I didn't know what they were responsible for. But you may know them from a little convention called New York ComicCon. That's right. They're the minds behind that. And they also at one point bought the PAX name. And they're the ones who run PAX every year in all the different cities that they run it, which is pretty interesting. So when I saw this and that they were involved, I was like, oh, did they buy the E3 name and now they're actually running E3? Because if you go to Reedpop's website, you can actually see in their timeline that they acquired these different names, like PAX. They actually acquired PAX from Penny Arcade. And they run it, like they're responsible for everything. But it sounds like here they're kind of more of a hired gun. They even went so far as to list some of the other things that Reedpop is responsible for here. We already mentioned PAX, EGX, Star Wars Celebration, and of course New York Comic Con, which we already mentioned. They also run a lot of different websites, which they mentioned here, like Eurogamer, GamesIndustry.biz, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun, all websites I've visited. I'm sure a lot of you have, as well. But it says here that the ESA announced today that their flagship show, E3, is going to return in June of 2023. And it's going to be its first in-person event in 4 years, which is crazy to think about. Man, 4 years in any kind of tech industry, whether it's video games or whatever, is, I feel, an eternity, right? So for them to not have much of anything, in person at all for that much time, it's kind of mind-boggling, really. Reedpop actually commented that they're going to welcome back publishers, developers, journalists, content creators, manufacturers, buyers, and licensors, and also highlight digital showcases and feature in-person consumer components. So it sounds like they're going to do a lot of the same stuff, but of course, Reedpop has been hired to kind of reshape the whole idea of it here. It claimed it had listened to the feedback of the gaming community and would honor what's always worked, in quotes, about the games industry event while reshaping what didn't. So I'm curious to know, what exactly they plan to reshape, right? What is E3 going to be like in 2023 for all the people going to the event, right? Because it's only been a few years, I think a few years before the pandemic hit, that E3 actually opened up to the public. Now, E3 was not always opened up to the public. They only let, industry people in, different publishers, developers, different journalists, that kind of thing. Those were the only people that were really getting in, playing the games, talking about the games, reporting on the games. And then, within a couple years of the pandemic, like a couple years before it, that was when they decided, hey, we're going to open this up to the public. We're going to actually let real people into this, right? So I'm curious if E3, they're going to turn E3 kind of into more of like a PAX meets, an industry event type of thing. You'll still see journalists and important developers and publishers there, but there'll also be maybe like a separate sectioned off area for gamers to go in and check out some of these games, and not only check out games, but maybe win prizes and, that kind of stuff. I feel like it could really be successful in that way if that's where they were going to go with it. And, hopefully Reedpop is the company that can bring that together and make it work. So they do go on to say here, though, that, they're kind of hyping it up quite a bit here. It's a tremendous honor and privilege for Reedpop to take on responsibility of bringing E3 back in 2023, said Lance Fensterman, president of Reedpop. With the support and endorsement of the ESA, we're going to build a world-class event to serve the global gaming community in new and broader ways than we already do at Reedpop through our portfolio of world-leading events and websites. So, a lot of marketing jargon there, but I mean, for him to come out and say like, this is going to be huge, like that's a lot of hype. And E3 is it's a big thing to a lot of people. So hopefully he's going to come correct and and actually mean what he's saying here and have a really, really cool outing here with E3. It says here, even before the pandemic forced E3 into hiatus, the ESA was already facing significant pressure to reinvent the show, with several major publishers, including EA, Sony, and Activision, having abandoned the event in recent years, not to mention Nintendo walking away a long time ago as well. Didn't Sony at one point too? I could be wrong on that. And that was before the cancellations urged companies such as EA and Ubisoft to enjoy success running their own digital events. So right, most companies realized, hey, we can do this on our own. We don't really need E3. So I guess Reedpop is going to kind of step in and hopefully try to get some of those publishers and developers back, right? A notable competitor also emerged during E3's time off, and that's where they're bringing up Summer Game Fest here. The show held its first in-person event last month and has said it will return in 2023. So this is even more interesting because, this was the first year that Jeff Keighley, who has organized Summer Game Fest. He also does the Game Awards at the end of every year too. But they actually had an in-person event, which is pretty interesting. But that was only for insiders. It wasn't public. So maybe E3 is going to kind of, that'll be where the competition, leans for them, and they can get the edge, is that they'll have the public back in, to see some of these things, right? Commenting further on Reedpop's plans for the new E3, the company's head of games, Christopher Dring, who says he's been involved in discussions around the future of the show, claimed the company intended to embrace everything that takes place during E3 week. I had a few Zoom calls with some of the people deciding what's next for E3. These included people from across the company outside of it. We spent hours discussing what the show could be, and suddenly I got excited. Well, suddenly. I would have been excited immediately if I was working on this. I would have been like, oh, cool, we're going to reform E3 and make it fun again. Count me in. I would have been excited from the get-go. Took a few Zoom calls, though, to to really get this guy going here. We're throwing ideas around about how we could get those consumer and business elements to work. We talked about what we could offer those companies not interested in big booths. We dreamed up ways we could make the event more of a celebration and less like a battleground. They had thought about it all. We discussed ways to embrace everything that takes place during E3 week, whether they are part of the show floor or not, and that includes things like the PC Gamer Show, Devolver Digital's Car Park, and yes, Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. Because to those watching at home, all of that is E3. To most people, the event isn't two halls in downtown LA, but it's the showcases, the reveals, and the video games, which is true. That's what it is to a lot of gamers out there. E3 is more than an expo, it's an idea, and one that's bigger than Reedpop and the ESA. There's no use fighting against that. The desire to unite the industry, irrespective of whether they're part of the show or not, extends around the world too. E3 is already a global event, which is true. It's got the cachet, right? We want to take that further. Some of the ideas are too ambitious to pull off in 1 year, but we can certainly give it a try. So, that's really promising to hear. I know that was a lot of, stuff to read all in one go right there. But basically, it sounds like they're exploring a lot of different avenues to try to make this thing appealing to people again. Because, for those of you who don't know, who don't listen to a lot of podcasts or read a lot of news, I know E3 was like looking long in the tooth, we'll say, to a lot of like industry vets and stuff. They felt like, what was the point in going, because a lot of these companies, as I said earlier in the video, a lot of them were just saying, hey, we're not going to show up anymore. We're not going to rent this really expensive space or big booth or whatever, because we can do this online presentation and we can get more viewers than we probably would, people visiting our booth or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting to hear, that they're kind of trying to reshape everything. So I guess what remains here is like, what will it be? What will it look like next year? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of excited to see what they're going to do, because E3 has been a part of my life for a very long time. I look forward to it every year. I love the game announcements. I love sitting through, the different directs and online presentations and just soaking it all in and enjoying it, So very curious to see what they're going to do with it here. Well, there you go, everybody. E3 2023 is on. What do you think? You think it's a cool thing that they're returning with E3? Are you kind of over it? Are you just like, hey, I don't watch it anymore, I don't really care? Or maybe you're one of the people who thought E3 should go away permanently. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. And thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.